played Dalek innards for many years, and he was playing the rabbi in this production of Fiddler on the Roof, and I said, I've got the part. And he reached inside his rabbi costume and he pulled out a postcard and he said, I had a really good feeling about this. And he handed me the postcard, which I've still got, and it's got 3 Daleks on it, and it said on the back, it said, welcome to the family, and then P.S. you will not be exterminated, it said, which is really sweet. And then my agent rang back and said, look, it's a bit more complicated. She said, because congratulations, they want you to play the part in these 3 episodes, but there's the possibility that Bonnie Langford might be leaving, and they've asked if you'd like to take over as the assistant. I mean, here's me, I've never been in front of a television camera before. It was just absolutely amazing. So I went out, put the phone down, went out to the phone box and felt like I was in a bit of a state of shock. And the very next scene we had to do in the musical it's called the gossip scene. And of course, by this time, the news had gone right around the building. So we went on stage and I was like this. And everyone was just like slapping me on the back like this. And Topol came over and got, congratulations, you know. And I think the audience must have been like, what the hell's going on? And then we sort of all went back to Fiddler on the Roof. It was great. It was really exciting.
Can you do your Cilla Black? I saw you on Wow this morning.
Oh, all right. Now, what did I do? Well, I had this red wig and I had this sort of huge thing with shoulder pads and this sort of very, very high heels that I couldn't walk in, and I just came tottering on like this. Welcome to Blind Days! It's lovely to meet you here, Laura, lovely people! That's my Cilla Black. But it's even better with the polystyrene cup teeth.
Excepting the Doctor that you work for, who was your favourite Doctor Who?
Oh, that's quite good that you said that, because it's nice and diplomatic, isn't it? No, Sylvie was a brilliant Doctor, I thought. It's very difficult, isn't it? Because they're all so different, the Doctors. And I tend to believe, I heard this once, that the Doctor you're most fond of is the one that was around when you were growing up, when you were at a certain age, you know. And although I must have seen Patrick Troughton, I don't really remember him that well. I mean, I'm old enough to remember him quite well, but we didn't have a telly in our house for a while, apparently. I can't even remember that. Not a very good memory. So the Doctor that I really remember most of all, that started me off on, you know, Doctor Who, was John Pertwee, and he was... I remember, the only thing I really remember about Doctor Who is that episode, the Green Death, and I remember those horrible maggots and, they gave me nightmares, they did. And apparently my mum said that I watched one of the early Cybermen stories and got so scared of Cybermen that she actually had to, I had nightmares about Cybermen, so she had to stop me watching. And she's very clever, my mum, because I had this thing about rats as well when I was little. I used to get really scared of rats, partly brought on by being taken to see the Nutcracker with all these rats running around. And so my mum was very clever, and she, after a few sleepless nights, she obviously, oh gosh, I'm going to have to be clever here, and she pretended to spray rat poison down in my bedroom, and I never worried again. It was brilliant, that. I thought it was so clever. I can't remember what she did about Cybermen, but probably put gold coins all around the room or something like that. Anyway, who else can say that they had a chance? Oh, and the funny thing about the rats was that when I was doing Fiddler on the Roof, that very show, I was talking to one of the guys in the chorus about this, and he was a dancer, and he said, oh, I used to dance for the festival ballet, and there was another guy there, and he said, oh yeah, I did too, and I said, oh really, I used to go and see that when I was little, They said, oh, which ballet did you see? I said, oh, the Nutcracker, and I said, oh, the rats used to terrify me, and these two guys said, which year would you have gone in? And I sort of worked out, well, it must have been, 60-something, and they said, we were playing the rats. And it was just so strange that not only did I get to meet the rat, and actually one of them is a good friend of mine now, but I got to get my own back on the Cybermen as well. It's fantastic. I'm sorry that I had an idea to do a children's series of books about the Doctor and Ace, and I took it to Virgin last year, but unfortunately their research showed that because Doctor Who'd been off the air and blah blah blah, and because there's a new Doctor and all that, they said that really there wasn't a market for it, which is a real shame, because I'd have liked to have sort of edited a series of children's books, which I think would have been sort of acceptable to teenagers or whatever. I don't know. But the Ace book was sort of pretty comprehensive in a way, although, I mean, I must say that we were asked to write. Well, I didn't read my contract properly, which is very foolish of me. I know I should do this, but I'm always signing things and I don't read it. Well, not checks, but, Anyway, so I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, sat in front of my word processor and everything, and sent in my stuff to Rebecca at Virgin, who was our sort of editor. And she was saying, yeah, fine, everything's fine. Finally ended up with this stack, of papers and had it all sent in. And she rang me back one day and she said, now, in the contract it says that you should both, you and Mike, write 50,000 words. I said, oh, does it? She said, yes. Well, she said, well, you've written 55,000 all on your own, so you're going to have to cut it. So I then had to go back and cut great chunks out. And also Gary Russell, who used to be the editor of Doctor Who magazine, he was very helpful in having a sort of a third eye, if you like, because he looked through it for us and found what would be most interesting for people like yourselves to find out about. And it was really good, actually. I can't say I enjoyed the process of actually writing the book, because it did become a bit of a chore in the end. But I loved the process of editing it, sort of condensing words and, fiddling around with it and putting the right bit in the right place and things like that. But I don't know whether there'll be any more. We've certainly got thousands more photographs, and we've certainly got, a few more stories up our sleeves. We're hoping, it really all depends on the sales. I mean, it seems to be going very well. And also, of course, I don't know whether you've heard that Virgin have actually now lost their licence and it's reverting to BBC Books. So Mike and I are certainly up for doing something else. At the moment, I must admit, I'm just far too busy to do anything else. But having said that, I would like to do it, partly, as I say, because we've got such a lot of interesting photographs. It'd be nice to... what's the interest? Would you be interested in seeing more Doctor Who photos, or are you bored stiff of them? Oh, well, there's a few nods there. I'll take that as a yes. Somebody small has got a question here. She's got a lovely waistcoat on as well. I like the waistcoat.
Which one is the horrors, the baddest monster?
Which one's the baddest monster? Ooh, well, for me, it's got to be those nasty Cybermen, because they gave me such bad dreams when I was about your age. But as I said, it was just a great chance to get my own back on them. Not too fond of the Daleks, although when you've sort of rehearsed with them and realised that they're quite nice people, really, it's okay. I think I'd have liked to have done a story with the Autons, because they scared me as well as a kid. I think anything that's sort of vaguely human, that's sort of everyday, like a shop dummy that you see in a window, and suddenly it's a deadly weapon. I think that's very scary. Something sort of rather than an alien. And aliens are so difficult to do, aren't they, on a small budget? I mean, let's face it. You do end up with a blobby monster who walks like this. But, I wasn't too keen on the Haemovores in Curse of Fenric either. I thought they were pretty ghastly. I'll just, what do you think's the baddest monster?
the Master.
Oh, the Master, yeah, I forgot about him, didn't I? How could I forget the Master? Yeah, he was a pretty nasty piece of work, wasn't he? In fact, I noticed on your waistcoat you've got all those cats on. Reminds me, I nearly turned into a cat in one of my stories. Just got away with it, though. Yeah, that was pretty uncomfortable, that, because I had to wear these contact lenses, and sand and sun and contact lenses, I had no for having worn them before, they don't really mix very well. But that's another story. The more the relationship between Ace and the Doctor developed, the more Sylvester and I got to know each other. I mean, Sylvester was a great influence as well, because he, he quickly became a great friend and still is. And so he's a very generous performer as well, and would always, give me stuff to do. Or, he would think about the logic of the situation. And for example, there was a scene in, what was it in? It was Remembrance of the Daleks, and it was written, and the Doctor was going to take a gun, and I think he was going to fire the ATR at the Dalek. And Sylvester said, no, this is wrong, the Doctor should not ever fire a weapon unless really, really has to, and he didn't want his to even kind of, touch it. So he said, why don't we give that to Ace, and of course it was far more suitable, because then the Doctor could be very, guarded about what he thought about. I mean, I loved all those bits where he kind of, give me a can of that Nitro 9 you're not carrying, or whatever. I can't remember the exact lines, but I thought that was really good, and it sort of also managed to take away from that sort of slightly dodgy area of Ace's, keenness on blowing things up and all that. There was at least a sort of fatherly eye over. Oh, got another question over here. I better ask you what your name is. What's your name? Lucy. No.
Josie.
Josie.
We saw you on television.
Did you? What, this morning? Did you see me driving a big car? Oh, good. How old are you?
4.
What a great age. Wouldn't it be nice to be 4, everybody? What were you going to ask, Josie? Oh, is that what you wanted to tell me? Oh, well, that's very nice. Thank you very much. You have to wave to me. You never know, and I might wave back on telly one day. That would give you a surprise, wouldn't it? Right, any more questions? Did you see me on telly this morning?
No, I didn't. I was asleep, probably.
That is a very good plan. I wish I'd been asleep, I must say.
Before you got the part, were you interested in science fiction, or was that the first time you had anything to do with it?
It was the first time I'd had anything to do with it. It was funny. I mean, this career sort of takes you funny ways and nice ways. I mean, it was wonderful to think that part that I did. Well, I mean, gosh, next year it's 10 years since Dragonfire. Just a bit of a worry. And so you get to, here I am doing conventions, and it's just fantastic. But science fiction is something I was never that interested in. I mean, let's see, when I was younger, I suppose, I love things like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and that sort of thing, but I'd never read any science fiction, and I'd never been particularly interested in it, although I was interested in science and the planets, and when I was younger. And so it's been a really interesting experience to sort of delve into the world of science fiction a bit, and now I'm doing a programme called It's a Mystery on ITV Thursday afternoons, yeah. And and so that's interesting, because it's a sort of similar angle in a way, investigating sort of spooky phenomena and things like that, and finding out about. And I do find it a fascinating thing. Although I have to say, when I started, even the Doctor Who books, I mean, when I started reading them, I do find it quite difficult to get into. But then when I'm into the book, I really enjoy it. It's great. And I do tend to watch, science fiction on TV. Have you been watching Neverwhere? I saw the first episode. I haven't managed to catch any more of it. But what do you think of it? Is it? Okay? Oh, it's all right. It's probably one of those things I think that needs, you know, probably another series to get it going. But I hope it's gone down well enough to... Sheila Wells is here, isn't she, this weekend? Yeah, because she was doing the makeup for it. Yeah. Oh, is she? Oh, good. Yes, because she told me about Neverwhere last year, and I was very excited because it sounded like a sort of good project that was coming up. But I think because of X-Files and, you know, the way all that's going at the moment, I'm sure that science fiction will, you know, the TV stations will suddenly go, oh, you know, science fiction. It's a shame, in a way, the X-Files thing didn't happen while Doctor Who was still on, because I'm sure Doctor Who wouldn't have been allowed to disappear. But there you go. It's funny, I don't actually get to watch much TV at all, especially at the moment. I'm quite busy. And when I do, it's usually, I must say, sort of, you know, soppy Jane Austen or, you know, sort of nice classic drama or something, because that's what I wanted to do at one stage, although I'm not quite sure whether I want to do that now. But yeah, my sister-in-law is absolutely fanatic about Babylon 5, and I keep threatening to drag her to a convention, because I'm sure she'd have a whale of a time. Be good fun. But I just think, you know, I think the more science fiction, the merrier, and I think, you know, I'm sure you'd agree with that. I think science fiction is very good for younger people as well, because it lets the imagination run riot, and yet it's also based on some kind of truth, which I think that young people get interested in a whole load of other things via science fiction. I mean, I've certainly seen the fans who were like little 10 years ago, who are now not so little, and you know, I've seen them really progress and get interested in all sorts of things through science fiction, which is great. Melvin and Maureen's musicograms, crikey. We did 2 series of Melvin and Maureen's musicograms, and I think we did the last one, oh gosh, 4 or 5 years ago, and it's been such a success. They're always repeating it. It's wonderful, which is very nice for me, because I get a nice little check through the post. But unfortunately, there's been a huge changes at the BBC, and there are going to be even more in the next year or so. So I've been finding out through various channels. And it's very difficult to actually get stuff made anymore. It sounds ridiculous, but I mean, it's crazy, because I'd love to do more. And the producer who I worked with on that, who I also worked with on a programme called Corners, and she's now working on Words and Pictures with me. She actually left the BBC in the spring through sort of lots of voluntary redundancies and lots of political things. But she might set up a production company and then maybe be able to make Melvin and Maureen's and sell it back to the BBC and do that. But it would be certainly something I'd be very interested in doing again, because it really was... Vince, my partner, says that it's the best thing I've ever done. You know, forget Doctor Who, forget all the presenting. He said, Melvin and Maureen, I'll never do anything as good as Melvin and Maureen again. I don't know whether I quite agree with him there, but it was great fun to do. It really was. In fact, it was funny. I was when Anthony Turner was doing Blue Peter, they used to be in the next door studio to us quite a lot when we were recording Melvin and Maureen's. And Anthony said to me, like, a couple of years ago, bumped into her and we were talking, and she said, oh, I used to be so jealous of you. I said, what do you mean? You know, you're loaded. You got a really good career and everything. She said, no, she said, because we used to switch over the ring main, it's called. What it is, it's this thing at television centres. They have, you can switch the TV to show whatever is happening in each studio. So that people can watch and check out what's going on. And she said, we used to turn on the ring main to your studio, and you were always having such a good time and always laughing, and we were grinding ourselves into the ground on Blue Peter, and you were having such fun. And I thought, oh, that's really good. It was really nice to think that I'd had a laugh. And it really was good fun, because Matthew Devitt, who was Melvin, funnily enough, it was really strange going from Doctor Who, working with Sylvester, who's 5'6" and a dog end, as he says. 5'6" and a dog end, dark curly hair, glasses, not on Doctor Who, but in real life, to work with a man who's 5'6" and a dog end, dark curly hair, glasses. It was really strange. I mean, they're like sort of doppelgangers, Melvin and McCoy. But anyway, both equally fun to work with. When we finished doing the series, it was a real blow because, of course, we didn't know it was going to be the end. Neither Sylvester nor I had any inkling that, well, our last story that we recorded was Ghostlight, and everyone went off saying, you know, see you next year and everything, and our contracts were due to be taken up. And then about, I think it must have been about 6-8 weeks later, I was rehearsing for Corners at the BBC, and the phone rang, and it was Sylvester. And he said to me, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "Well, I will now." And he said, "I've got some bad news." He said, "My agent went out with somebody from the BBC for a meal, and they said, 'Oh, sorry to hear about Doctor Who.'" And my agent said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Oh, that they're not doing anymore." And we were the last people to hear, really. And it was a bit, I was annoyed that we hadn't been told in a more formal way, and that it had gone through, you know, round the houses before we'd been told. And then I just felt sort of frustrated, really, that they were being so, the BBC were being so silly to not do this programme that costs such little money to make and is sold around the world, and, you know, has such a huge following, and here we are 10 years on and everything. So I was very disappointed about that. So when the whole thing about the film came along, I never, even for 1 minute, considered that I would be asked. And then it was great, because when Sylvester was asked, I was just so pleased for him, you know, it was just fantastic. I'm sure he'll tell you tomorrow all about how that came about, and but I realised that they were appealing to a very wide American audience, not just Doctor Who fans, of which there are many very, very loyal fans who work, you know, very, very hard to get Doctor Who put on their local stations. Yeah, so I was astonished when last February I went over to LA to a convention, and Philip Siegel, the new producer, he was due to come to the convention, and I thought, oh, big Hollywood producer, you know, I thought, oh, he'll never know who I am. I was just about to go over to him and say, "Oh, hello, Philip, my name's Sophie Aldred, you know, I played Ace in Doctor Who." And he came rushing over to me and said, "Sophie," he said, "it's so lovely to meet you." He said, "I'm so sorry that we couldn't give you a part in the film. I really tried my hardest." And I was absolutely gobsmacked, you know. I said, "Really?" You know. And he said, "Oh, yes." He said, "Oh, I've watched all your stories. I think you're great," you know. And it was wonderful that somebody had taken the trouble to do that. And in fact, Philip tells a great story of, because he's always been a fan, and it's his sort of willingness to get this show on the road that he actually got the film made. I mean, he really, really worked hard. And he said that when he finally got it all together, he thought, right, I'm going to watch some Doctor Who episodes. So he rang somebody up and said, bring me Doctor Who episodes, you know, here now, like they do in Hollywood. And a couple of days later, his personal assistant came up and said, "Oh, Philip, the Doctor Who tapes have arrived." And he said, "Oh, great, bring them in." And they said, "Well, that may be a little difficult. Look out of the window." And he looked out of the window. There was this truck parked outside, and it had every available Doctor Who episode that there was. They'd shipped them over, and anyway, you know, got them converted and whatever. Anyway, he religiously watched every single episode that he could, from Hartnell to Survival, well, and Ghostlight, every single one. So, I mean, he knows so much about Doctor Who, it's unbelievable. And, I mean, I think that is amazing that he was willing to do all that research. And last February in LA, he brought some stills. He'd just come straight from the set. Sylvester had only just finished filming, and he brought some stills, and it was the first time anyone had seen. And it was so exciting. I mean, I was nearly in tears, and you know, and you're the fans, you know. I mean, it was like this. I felt that the interior of the TARDIS was like, this is how it should be. You know, this is just so fantastic. Having the money to do so much with it, and Sylvester just absolutely loved being in that set. I thought Sylvester was fantastic in the film. I wanted to see more of him, really. I think he felt very, very comfortable in that TARDIS. Didn't want to leave. But yeah, as for me, I was just really pleased that Philip even knew who I was. But yes, it is frustrating that I haven't had a chance to go back and finish her off, really, because it's all very well to walk through a bush in the quarry, and you know, but it's not the same thing, really. It still feels like a bit incomplete, you know. It's partly why I wrote the book, actually, because it does seem, funnily enough, more complete now after I've written the book, because it's like getting all my... When I was writing the book, I was actually in a bad mood quite a lot of the time, and I suddenly realised that actually it was because I was, you know, sort of remembering how wonderful it had been, and sort of slightly annoyed that we weren't, you know, that we hadn't been allowed to finish it. But you know, but that's a good way to round it off.
I'm told the version we got was cut.
Yes. I mean, we got a cut-down version really because of the violence. I mean, sadly, you know, Dunblane had just happened, and there was a gunfight which happened between the teenagers outside the TARDIS, and that was deemed, quite rightly, I think, not, you know, they shouldn't put that out. And there was also, Sylvester will tell you tomorrow what he did, but he shot a lot more, and, you know, there was a very scary moment, apparently, where he sits up on the operating table, and they thought, well, you know, it would sort of damage young minds to see their icon in such a way. But exactly. People can always close their eyes, that's what I think, or switch off. Well, hopefully not, actually, but switch on again pretty quickly afterwards.
Does it still worry you to think sort of, this is going to actually go on for the rest of your life? There's always going to be somebody. There's always going to be somebody there who thinks of you as ace and doesn't think of you as anything else.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, I'm delighted that all this is still carrying on. When I got the part, I had no idea, absolutely no idea that all this existed. And the weird thing is, I mean, I'd heard about Doctor Who fans and all those, you know, boring Anunnaki gags and stuff like that, which we know aren't true, don't we? Well, not very, anyway. Unzip those Anunnakis. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I remember the first convention I actually went to was the very first one I went to. Oh, this is funny. I just finished filming Dragonfire, and I went down to a radio station in Brighton to do an interview with this guy who's a fan himself, and there was this big science fiction convention happening down in Brighton. It was that's right, 1987. Conspiracy 87, that's the very one. Were you there? Amazing. And anyway, we did this interview, and he said, oh, you know, you're the new Doctor Who girl, and we chatted away and stuff. And then he said, when we come off air, he said, oh, should we go down to the convention for a laugh? I said, yeah, brilliant. I've never been to a convention in my life. Although I'd been really interested in Thunderbirds, and I did my dissertation at university on Jerry Anderson, so I thought, believe it or not. And so I went down to this convention, and I was thinking, oh, I might see some Thunderbirds things, you know. So we went round, and it was so funny, because I was like dressed in a pair of old jeans and stuff, and we walked round, and this poor bloke, he keeps going up to all the Doctor Who tables and going, hi, this is Sophie Aldred, the new Doctor Who companion. And they were going, oh, yes. and I was sort of slinking around going, oh no, I'm not with him. And it was just so embarrassing, because I mean, nobody knew that I was, and they all thought I was just a bit, You know, they all thought, I don't know what they thought really, but hate to think. Anyway, and then I went to a thing at Imperial College. It was Panopticon, I think, that same year, 87. And again, it was just before everybody knew about it. And I remember turning up. I've written this in the book actually. I remember turning up again in some old jeans, and I've got flour in my ear. I'm sorry about it. I'm going to get those tea ladies. That's this morning. We did this little sketch with they said something like, oh, we've been learning about women's tissues from the Spice Girls and empowerment. And I said, no, it's women's issues and empowerment. And they said, no, dear, women's tissues. And they stuffed tissues down the front. They said, and empowerment. And they got this big powder puff and splattered flour all over my face. Oh, that's what it is. Oh, well, it makes a change from cake, which I usually get covered in. Anyway, sorry about that. Yes, I went to Imperial College. And nobody knew who I was, again, you know, sort of strolled in like this, thinking, wow, because it was a big convention, and got taken to hospitality, and there was Nick Courtney, John Levine, and John Pertwee, you know, and I sat down, and I was just like, that's the Brigadier! That's Doctor Who! No, I mean, it was just amazing. And then I was taken to the back of this auditorium, and I could see far away Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant were doing a chat, and Nicola was looking absolutely gorgeous. She was wearing a sort of orange silk jacket, and her hair was all beautiful. And I looked at my sort of ragged t-shirt and my jeans, and I thought, oh dear. Anyway, we decided to do this sort of gag where I would ostensibly win a raffle and go down and collect my prize, in inverted commas, which was a visit to the set of Doctor Who. So the MC said, right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a surprise raffle. Please look in your pockets, find your tickets, and the number is whatever it was. And I went, it's me! And I ran down to the stage. Of course, everybody's just looking daggers at me going, I wanted to go to the set of Doctor Who. Anyway, I got up on the stage, and the MC said, so how do you feel about your prize, a day on the set with Doctor Who? And I said, well, I don't know really, because, and the audience were getting ready to kill me, you know. and I said, because, well, I've just been there for 2 weeks, and, you know, and the MC said, ladies and gentlemen, Sophie Aldred, the new companion. And at that moment, this sea of people came surging down the steps towards me. Cameras were clicking everywhere. I was like, you know, like this. I was blind with all the lights in my eyes. It was just incredible. And I had no idea that all this was going to happen. And, you know, trips to America, and it's absolutely fantastic. And what I've noticed over the years is that both Sylvester and I thought, you know, when the last sort of, you know, series went out, we thought, oh, here we go, you know, we'll have a few conventions and then it will just slowly decline and people will forget about us. Well, we saw a bit of a dip about 3 years ago, and now it's bigger than it ever was before. It's amazing. I mean, it's lovely to see young kids who, you know, who are watching episodes on UK Gold. Somebody's holding 2 fingers up at me. 2 minutes. Oh, right, who's going to count me down? I haven't got my earpiece in. No, so it's absolutely brilliant that people are still supporting Doctor Who and turning up to conventions and still interested enough to come here on a Saturday afternoon and hear me rattling on about my life with Doctor Who. One more question. Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. How generous. That's very nice of you. You found a watch? Oh, have you just found that on the chair? Has anyone lost a watch? Oh, it's a Tweety Pie watch. Anybody own up to owning a Tweety Pie watch? Well, I'll tell you what we'll do, Josie. We'll put that in Lost Property later. All right? Right.
What was it like to work on the second Stranger video?
Oh, the Stranger videos. Well, what was really lovely about working on those was that I hadn't really met Colin and Nicola before. You know, we'd had occasional chats at conventions, but what's nice about all these things, the conventions, the videos, all the spin-offs, is that I have got to know very well all the Doctor Who family, and it is like a family. It sounds really corny, but we have a lovely time together. I'm so glad I got to know John Pertwee, you know, fantastic man, and it was just like that. It was great. That was the main thing about it. It was just lovely to get to know Colin and Nicola, and somebody's now making windy, uppy signals at me. So anyway, I think I'm doing autographs now. So if anybody wants my signature, and Sheila's on now, is she? Sheila Wells. So thank you very much for listening to me. See you later.